Dean Zimmerman, professor of philosophy at Rutgers University, will be speaking on the providential usefulness of simple foreknowledge, and we will get comments afterwards from Donald Smith, associate professor of philosophy at Virginia Commonwealth University. There should be a new version of Dean's paper being distributed throughout the conference center here, so make sure you have the new version. He's not going to be reading from the one in your packets. He's going to be reading from the new version that's being distributed right now. I don't have any more copies with me. If you don't have a copy of that, you might raise your hand so that those who have copies can get one in your hands. So somebody look around and try to find out who still needs one. All right. My name is John Mullen. I'm also a former student of Al Plantinga's, and I'm going to make this a fairly traditional session in the sense that we'll stick with the rules that have been established as something like a precedent up to this point, and also traditional in the sense that I just have to share a story about Al. And the one that comes most readily to mind is one that occurred early on in my grad school days at Notre Dame. A little bit of background, of course. I learned an awful lot from Alvin Plantinga, more things than I can count. And of course, I learned the usual philosophical distinctions, right? So distinctions between basic belief and derived belief, distinctions between actualism and possibilism, and that sort of thing. I'd have to say one of the most valuable things I learned is more of a skill, and that is when you're confronted with mystery, we need to learn how to, or when we should just leave something in a mysterious state because it perhaps exceeds our capacities, and when something bears further investigation, it might be only temporarily mysterious. But back to the story. It occurred, as I said, early on in my grad school days. Al had a habit of inviting us grad students over to his home for gatherings. And I was at one of these gatherings. I think Donald was at this particular gathering as well. I'm quite sure he was. Don't know if Dean was there or not, although this was at the time when you were at Notre Dame, so you could have been. But I learned another distinction at this gathering. It's the distinction between Calvinist beer and non-Calvinist beer. And I'm not sure I ever really got that distinction down. If you want to know more about that, you're going to have to talk to Al about that. But another thing happened at this gathering, and that was that my wife, he had invited our families too, my wife happened to step the wrong way on one of his bar stools. He has a fairly standard bar with bar stools lined up, and broke one of the slats on it. So she broke Al's bar stool. And she was very upset about this. So she went to Al, and she was profusely apologetic, and she said, "I'm terribly sorry I broke your bar stool," and she offered to pay for it, replace it, whatever he wanted to do. And Al very graciously said, "Don't think another thing about it. No need to pay for it. No need to replace it." And that was very relieving to both of us. And then he added, "I've broken plenty of other people's bar stools before and never paid for any of them." Now, you understand that at the time, we were just very relieved to hear that we weren't going to have to replace the bar stool. So we just said thank you very much and just had a good time for the rest of the evening. A couple days later, though, couldn't help but wonder what the story was behind these other bar stools. Your imagination starts to run wild. And furthermore, maybe there's more than one story. Maybe there's a story for every bar stool. I mean, he said there were many. And then I started thinking, is this one of the things that, let's call it a mystery. Let's call it the mystery of the bar stools. Is this one of the things that should just be left as a mystery? Or was it worthy of further investigation? I came to the conclusion that it's one of those things that should be left as a mystery, and I don't have anything more to share with you about this. However, it's a true story, and if you don't agree with me that this is one of the things that should be left as a mystery and that it bears further investigation, I'm going to leave it to you to carry out that investigation with Al on your own time. Sorry about that, Al. You might get some questions. All right, but that's my story, and I think without further ado, we should get to Dean's paper. What do you think?
Okay. I'm going to try this thing. Seems to be working. Is it working? Yes? Everyone can hear me? Great. It is on, yes? Okay. Yeah, I'll look like this. Are there any questions? No? Okay. Good. So I won't tell any Al stories. I don't have any really funny ones to tell, I don't think. Or at least I can never remember the funny ones. Peter does that. But he sure has been an inspiration since I first began studying philosophy in college, long before I met him. And sometimes it's disappointing to get to know the people you admire from books. But this was quite the opposite. And the more I came to know him, the more my admiration grew, and he became also a sort of guardian angel, not just a guiding light, but a guardian angel at several crucial junctures. So thanks for that, Al, and you'll always be one of my biggest heroes. So I got through that without choking up. Too badly, anyway. So in usual philosophical fashion, you should expect me, like schoolyard, junior high kids do, to show my admiration for him by punching him on the shoulder really hard, giving yet another anti-Molinist argument. But I decided to break the mold, grow up a little bit, and give a paper where I beat up a little bit on a sort of common enemy, the advocate of simple foreknowledge. So, and by the way, I'm sorry about all the wastefulness of the new copy of the paper. An error was made, and what you got was a much earlier version than the one that I had sent in for the book. And I hope you don't read it, because there's all kinds of typos. And apparently, I thought that you spelled the word peaking in the same way that you would describe something that Al would do on climbing a mountain, reaching the top, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm going to read little bits of it, and then I'm going to talk through some other bits, so I won't read the whole thing, and I'll give you some signals. I'm going to compare three different views about foreknowledge and providence. They're views that are going to be really familiar to, I'm sure, everybody here. Molinism, familiar to us because, well, for many reasons, but certainly because of Al's advocacy of it. Open theism, a view towards which I have a lot of affection, and simple foreknowledge. The Molinists, of course, posit brutally true conditionals. I don't mean brutally here in some sort of negative way. It's just that they're true, and that's just all you can say about it. Conditionals about what individuals would or will do if put in certain circumstances. The circumstances in question are indeterministic ones, since Molinists are libertarians. If a creature is really free in a given set of circumstances, then the laws of nature and the prior states of the world do not determine which among a number of alternatives is chosen. The point of positing such conditionals is to allow God absolute, risk-free providential control. God has to know the end from the beginning, if he has complete foreknowledge, and the Molinist conditionals put God in a position to make an initial creative choice, knowing in advance what would happen on each alternative for every possible free creature, so long as he also arrives at settled intentions about what God himself will do when free creatures do what they will do, then all of the future is deducible from his initial choice of a world type and these conditionals. These conditionals of freedom, which I'll sometimes call CFs. Now, open theism, here I'm not reading, open theism and simple foreknowledge are views that deny God knows conditionals of freedom of this sort, or that he uses them. Open theism thinks that, the open theist thinks that without them, God must wait to learn what it is that we free creatures will freely do. The simple foreknowledge person denies this. My project here is, let's suppose that absolute complete foreknowledge is consistent with our being genuinely free and with libertarian as a theory of what freedom requires. And then let's see what follows from that And